The scripture says in Ecclesiastes chapter 8 and verse 14, there is a vanity that occurs on earth, that there are just men to whom it happens according to the work of the wicked. What happens to a wicked man happens to a just man. So there are things in this world which comes to everybody. Sin and temptation come to everybody. In the same way, sickness comes to everybody. As long as we are in the human body, whatever afflictions are in this world, it comes to everybody. God has given every human being a mind, body, and spirit. A mind has the things of the world, the intelligence, the wisdom of the world, and then the spirit gets connected to God. But then the body is in the flesh, and so whatever comes to every person touches the body. Even in Malachi chapter 4 and verse 2, the scripture says, yes, the Lord will arise with healing under his wings, even upon the righteous. So that means even the righteous will go through sickness, but the Lord will arise upon the righteous to bring healing to the righteous. Why do the righteous suffer? The first point, to keep the righteous humble. 2 Corinthians chapter 12 and verse 9. Paul complains, there is a thorn in my flesh, Lord. But God says, Jesus says, my strength will be perfected in your weakness. My grace is sufficient for you. He never said, I'm going to remove the sickness. But through that, he said, you will understand to walk after me with all humility. That's why Paul says, I know how to be abased, and I know how to live in all circumstances in the world, following Christ with all satisfaction that Christ is enough for me. Secondly, in Galatians 6:17 and Colossians 1:24, Paul says, I bear the marks of Christ in my body. And in another portion, he says, I carry the sufferings of Christ in my body for the sake of his body, the church. So it's not only Jesus who suffered on the cross for the whole of humanity. From time to time, if God chooses to use a person to cry for someone, or to bring the gospel to someone, or to serve someone in his name, he allows that person to suffer in their body, taking the sufferings of the people whom they serve. But God gives them grace to bear it, so that they receive compassion for the people whom they serve, and they serve them with all compassion because they have borne their sicknesses in their body also. It happened to my father when the Lord called him to bring healing to others through prayers. First, God afflicted my father with tuberculosis. He was vomiting blood at the age of 34, and he was about to die when he had a divine visitation. And the Lord taught him three things. He said, my son, unless you go through this sickness, you will not understand the agony of others for whom you pray for. Now you will not condemn them. You will have compassion on them when they come and tell you their sorrow, because you have been there in their pain. And secondly, do not trust anyone, because now there is no one to help you. Just trust me. And thirdly, know how to go through every circumstance and yet trust me. And God raised him up and made him a blessing to thousands and millions. That's why God allows suffering in the lives of the righteous. But he will never forsake them. He will never leave them. The suffering is only for some time. The compassion flows and miracles happen through them because of the love and compassion of Christ that flows through them, because they have gone through the suffering of the people whom they serve.